For Friday, week 21, into Romans chapter 9 today. And again, I'd encourage you to, if you've not read this, to hit pause, read it, and then come back to the video. Paul is addressing his Jewish brothers and sisters, the Israelites. And we often call the Israelites the chosen race, the God's people. And Paul says he has anguish in his heart because the Israelites were the part of the adoption, the glory, the covenants. They were given the law, worship, all the promises. The patriarchs belonged to them. But he stresses that it is not due to their race as much, but it's because it's for the Israelites that are the children of promise. So not Israelite is a child of God, but only those Israelites that are the children of promise. And goes on to talk about two people, Sarah, who bears a son, and Rebecca, that bears Jacob and Esau, and God's choosing of Jacob, and that God can be God and choose who he chooses to have mercy on, and has compassion on those he chooses to have compassion on. So his choosing of Jacob over Esau doesn't mean that God is unjust. It just means God can choose who he wants to have mercy on. And then goes on to talk about Pharaoh and how he hardened Pharaoh's heart, but it's showing mercy on those Israelites. And then talks about the clay. The clay has no business being angry at the potter on how things are made. And concludes with a couple of references to the Old Testament, to Hosea, that talks about the Gentiles that will be grafted into the faith, that those who are not my people, I will call my people. So it's just showing this was God's plan all along, and talks about the remnant in verse 27, Isaiah, a quote from Isaiah: if the Lord of hosts had not left us offspring, we would have been like Sodom and Gomorrah. So Paul is stressing God's mercy to the Israelites through the years, that the Israelites really blew it. You know, they had the covenantal promises of God, of a people and a place, and went into the Holy Land and disobeyed God's law, disobeyed the covenant and broke the covenant. And but God was faithful throughout that time, keeping a remnant of faith that would continually come back to God. God's people would rise up again and then disobey, and God always kept this remnant. And Paul is stressing that through God's mercy, this remnant has always been there, this remnant of faith. And if not, the Israelites would have been like Sodom and Gomorrah and totally destroyed. So, and then concludes going back to faith. In verse 30, what shall we say then? That Gentiles who did not pursue righteousness have attained it. And it's a righteousness by faith. But Israel, who pursued the law that wouldn't lead to righteousness, did not succeed in reaching the law. Why? Because they did not pursue it by faith, but as if it was based on works. So it's the focus again, that it's all based on faith as opposed to obeying the law. So kind of a hard chapter. It's hard in that Paul is addressing that God can be God. God can choose who he is merciful to, and who he is not merciful to. God can can use circumstances that don't make sense to us because we're not God. So it's a hard thing. It talks about election, that God chooses some and doesn't choose others. And that's really a difficult concept, but he says it is through faith. And I believe that all are given the opportunity to have faith. And the Israelites, it wasn't because they were born into being an Israelite. It is whether they were children of the promise, whether they believed in that promise that God gave to Abraham. So, a good chapter in that we just trust God to be God. We don't have to understand everything that's going on. It doesn't always make sense to our worldly standard, and God's faithfulness in bringing in the Gentiles, the non-Jews, through faith, and keeping this remnant of his people throughout the years as they have disobeyed. So we'll get into Romans 10 on Monday, and I pray. Romans is a complex book. I pray it's been there's been nuggets that you found a blessing, and I'd love to hear what you're learning through this. And again, if you don't have a church family, we'd love for you to try Salem, but above all, that you would find a church that upholds God's word and seeks to be faithful. God bless.